Welcome to the Infinite Potential Podcast, Episode 3. Nick and I talk about injuries, how to approach them mentally, and also the guided healing technique in this episode. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. We can't wait for you to hear it.
That I feel like there's so many disconnections. Like nobody seems to be on the same page. That's one downside of having so many people working with you. And it's almost like, hey, yeah, they're going to take care of that. And then you go to them to help take care of it. And they're like, oh, let's refer you to this person. They'll help you with that. And by the time they get to someone who can help them, they're already in a mindset that's kind of frustrated in a place of not being open to receiving help, whether that is with the recovery modalities. Like one of the athletes told me, like, I don't even know if I feel like going in tomorrow to go early to get treatment. And I was like, well, that is a very interesting statement coming from you, and your body is, it may be more excited to have some kind of treatment. And she had shared with me, it's like, well, it's like I kind of go in there all the time and it's the same thing. And I was like, well, this is very interesting because this gets to several different underlying things that are resulting in this issue that you're experiencing persisting. You know, it's like, one, physically, you're not actually getting the help that is physically helping you change, realign, heal, and recover. Number two, your entire mental state around this experience is that of you're now at the point where it's no longer helping you. Mentally, you don't even want to be there. So physically, you're not going to respond well to it. And there's not necessarily as much communication as on the whys. I feel like if you can communicate a why, regardless of whether or not they would agree with it, if they understood the why behind what they're doing, they can at least buy into it on any level that will allow them to understand what it is that they're doing so that they can actually put intentionality into it, put energy into it, and it gets something out of it, as opposed to it's more of like, hey, this is what we're doing today. Oh, we're changing this, or yeah.
Rehab sucks, and it's the human experience to not want to do boring stuff over and over again if they don't have the. It's almost like sales. You got to sell them the fucking perfect thing that they're going to get for doing all of the boring work afterwards, and like promise them that, and then you see a lot more buy-in. And we'll get into this in today's episode where we're talking about injuries, because it's something that's coming up frequently and something that we've been talking about ourselves off camera a ton when it comes to things. But I wanted to touch on something that you said, and they have this whole team. They have a large team that seems to be disconnected when it comes to the coaches and kind of opinions and things like that. And I think having a team is good, but because like you and me, we don't see eye to eye on everything that we do, but it gives a check and balance, right? I'm not the dictator, so I can't just be like, okay, we're doing this, and this is why I think we're doing this, because there's so many different avenues you can take with fitness that work, and with recovery and all that kind of stuff. But then you can say to do a movement one way, and I can be like, I don't agree with that. And then we can find a middle ground, or the person that's right will come out on top because we'll both go into it with an open mindset. And then we'll actually come out on top with what's best for that individual because of that. And then that creates research, that creates thinking, that creates problem solving around the problem that we're having. Where if everybody's just like, okay, do this, and they send them to the next person, the next person's like, I don't agree with that, let's do this instead. And then it just becomes a whole thing where now you're showing up every day and it becomes kind of
confusing.
It's confusing and discouraging because not only by not only sticking to one program, you're doing so many different things that you're actually probably moving backwards. And then you don't know what that dream outcome is at the end that you're supposed to be working towards. Right?
And you don't even know what's
I don't do things that suck. I don't do things that suck without being like, I don't do 10 minutes of lunges a day because I enjoy it. I do it because it's going to make me lose weight and it's going to make me hit the golf ball farther. And if I didn't know that it was going to do those things, and if somebody was just like, do 5-10 minutes lunges a day, don't explain it to me, I'd be like, fuck you. It hurts so bad. Why would I do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just like, it makes no sense to not have kind of like, okay, this is the goal. How are we going to get there? And here are the building blocks that we need to put in to get to that goal. And that's how everything should be explained, because
Yeah.
the equation, we'll always come back to the equation.
Yeah, it's so true. And I really love what you said too about like not only the checks and balances, but being able to articulate that and have open conversations around why, like, as a coach and an athlete, I love when my athletes ask me questions. I love when they challenge my point of view, because it tells me two things. One, they're invested. If
They
they
care.
didn't actually care and they weren't invested, they wouldn't ask questions, or they wouldn't feel some type of way. And two, it tells me that maybe they're seeing something from their perspective and their point of view that's speaking to them, their very being. And I want to know what that is, why they're seeing it, so that we're on two different pages. We can find, as you mentioned, the right page. But I also want to say there's not only the right page, or, the right exercise, but more so thinking of it, maybe this is the right approach right now to try. And that approach can change. Our approaches change based on an athlete, whether they're going through their off-season training, going into preseason, what they're doing in season, how they're progressing towards the end of that season when it's playoffs, how they come out of that and then repeat, right? That also might change based on very specific goals. So it's more so being able to have an open dialogue of communication, where this is, as from the coaching perspective, this is what we see, this is what our reasoning is, this is why we're doing this. And then from the athlete perspective, being like, okay, now I understand why you're saying this. I could see what you see, but here's what we see. How can we find, there's the page you're on, here's the page we're on. Where is that same page? Because, and I really love what you said about the human experience, because that is something that I've been telling all of them. I was like, listen, you remember this, at the end of the day, you're feeling frustrated. I understand that. And you're starting to view certain things in a negative light. And I get that. But let's look at the very most primitive understanding of what's going on. These individuals they're humans too. They're also experiencing pressure from other outside sources. And any human, we can't always expect the human experience of a leader to be that of a leader, because they're humans too. And they might be experiencing something where, and this has been articulated, where they feel lost and they're trying to figure it out. And instead of having everybody on the same lost page, remember the things that bring you all together, stick with those, and then from there, allow the path forward. I was like, in this situation, you're all out there on the ice together. You're the ones going into battle together, if you will. You all trust each other. You all know each other. You are all cultivating this level of connectedness and chemistry that it's not seen anywhere else on any other team. I'll tell you that right now. And that is something so powerful and so amazing. And you're all on the same page, but you're having a tough time buying into the page that's being presented. And that's okay. Sometimes you all can be the leader for them. You're all
Other hands. It's going to be better if everybody moves as a single unit.
Yeah.
They have a group's stronger than a single person, right? So if they go with a group collective in terms of like what they need to get done, have a game plan to go out, listen to the coach still, but then have this like team group cohesive feeling and game plan going into it. It'll fire you up. It'll make you guys work 100% better together, and it's going to move a lot quicker and better. And then, so you went from one thing to another. Another thing with the coaching, right, is when it comes to the individual or the program, right, there's an idea of what we should be doing, but everybody's so different.
Yeah.
I had 3 calls this morning with my golfers, right? 2 world long drive guys and a guy that plays on the Corn Ferry Tour, and they're doing versions of the same program that have been changed from the start, right? Because I take what I get with them on a weekly basis and we try and change it. And one of them's having problem with rotation to the right now. He's a left-handed swinger, so the follow-through is a little bit restricted. Where another long drive guy, we haven't done any rotational stuff, and he has absolutely become more flexible and everything like that, and not gotten any tighter through it. Everybody's just so different that if you go into this single frame of mind when it comes to coaching, like, it has to be evolved for the human that you're doing it with. And the bones can be the same, but everything else has to kind of be figured out over time. So if you're trying to figure out an injury, like, yeah, you can have that game plan going in, but like, what if that hurts?
Yeah.
You got to find an alternative, because you can't, there's going to be some pain working through some stuff, but like, it shouldn't be there. And if you as a coach can't pivot and problem solve from there to find an alternative that can make them better, but also doesn't give them the discouragement of feeling that injury on a daily basis,
Yeah.
like, it's dumb to approach it that way. And it makes them go into every exercise knowing that it's not doing what they want it to do, or they don't really believe that it's going to work. And believing is half of the battle when it comes to coming back from injuries. It's a
Yeah.
mindset thing just as much as it is a physicality thing.
Yeah, 100%. And it's and you and I both have seen this approach from, this is just the majority of um coaches in that I've at least kind of experienced in working with injured athletes that come to us. It's kind of like, oh, if that bothers you, then don't do it. Or just kind of like, let's just not even address it and ignore it and hope it fixes itself,
Doesn't do
instead
that.
of like focusing on the why are you experiencing this? Okay, if you're experiencing this and with this movement, why? What is causing this pain, this misalignment that is creating this pain for you? How can we get you in a position that is moving the body through a range of motion that is comfortable? If it's not, where is that disconnect? How can we fix that? Instead, it's kind of like someone else will fix it. And honestly, from a liability standpoint, I feel like no one actually wants to do anything. They're like,
Too scared.
yeah. And it's like, all right, go to the doctor. And most of the time, and now this has been starting to change, because I'm hearing different stories of people finding being referred to doctors and physios that do take a more active role in the recovery process, which I absolutely love. One individual that I know, this was probably 6 or so months ago. He was going through something, and the doctor had the doctor was talking about, like, all right, we're going to go in for a knee surgery. And this isn't one of any of our athletes. This was just a family friend. And I was, curious as to, like, oh, what kind of stuff are they having you do? And they're like, well, they have me doing a whole entire like structured program. We're working on the nutrition right now. We're working on fixing all of the physiological compensations. We're working on addressing the root causes that have led to me being in this place that I would need a surgery for this injury. And by the time that it was probably, I think, like I want to say 3-month process, give or take, leading up to the injury, to the surgery. And his results coming out of that were significantly better. And I really applaud that doctor in the intentionality, the level of detail, and how much that doctor cared about that individual's quality of life, their quality of movement, their quality of health, and understanding and teaching them why we're doing this, so that he was bought in making some of these changes that were pretty big changes for him. He was bought into it, and I got to experience and see the change in his excitement kind of leading up to the surgery, having taken more of a proactive role. And I was like, more people, if they're going to get surgery, these are the type of people they need to be working with, where it's not just, okay, well, we're going to go in, fix this, rest, and we're going to do these very basic rehab things because that's what everybody has done in the orthophysio world for so many years, right? And I've heard this from you can feel the fear that like these athletes have around some of the prognoses they're receiving from the training, from maybe some of the trainers or like the physios or doctors that they're seeing around their injuries. And one of the first things that I hear is immediately you can feel that they have taken on what that prognosis was. Give you an example. We were talking about one of the girls talking about her back injury and some issues that have been persistent on that front. And she said, I had asked how long you've been experiencing this, and it kind of goes back to college. A very similar kind of circumstance that I had experienced. And she had said, like, the doctors had told her, it's like, you know, we got to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to need to do surgery. And then, like, or you could potentially have permanent nerve damage. And the way she told me that today, I could feel how much that what they had said to her is still ruminating in her very thought, which is then also tied to every movement and experience around the back. Also tells me why that going into this, maybe going in for treatment, she's not expecting anything because the experience individually isn't conducive for having a favorable outcome. Her totality around the mindset of the overall experience she's been continuing to have with this back opportunity, if you will, has put her in a place of kind of accepting this is how things are. And this is just
we got to change the mindset around that. And we'll get into our unique experiences. I know we've kind of talked about it in the other episodes that we've been in, but doctors are very like fix problem after happens. Let it get to a point where it's so bad that now we can cut or prescribe. And thank God it's changing. And it's not a doctor's fault, it's the education system's fault.
Yep.
In a lot of ways, right? And that's just what they have to say to maintain their job.
Yeah.
Because if they're not doing those things, then they're pushing the it's a business. They're pushing the money to another industry or another business when they're trying to fix them, which is, you know, understandable. And it's not their fault because that's not their mindset. It's what the textbooks are teaching them because the people that write the textbooks understand that part of it.
Say that one more time. Please say that one more time because this is one of the biggest things within the education system, especially around, I'd say,
medicine.
Disconnect with medicine and actual health.
Yep. So it's not a doctor's fault that they're jumping to these conclusions and telling people these outcomes because it's what they're taught in school and what they have to say under their licenses and everything like that. Because the people that are building the textbooks, the people that are funding the research, the people that are doing everything, it all comes from the place of money, right? Yeah. So it's pharmaceuticals and it's medical device equipment and it's all this other stuff that is being used to fix problems after they're done and not in terms of preventative care or actually working towards a better goal rather than just the outcome where you really don't have to do any work and then it's fixed.
Yes.
Without some like minor PT. And we'll get into that. But
that actually, yeah, that brings me to an amazing secondary point. And this, Lacasse and I were having this wonderful conversation around this on our drive out to Montreal. And this is also something I'm sure everybody knows. If you know me, you know how passionate I am about mental health, mental well-being, and mental performance. And I have experienced more than my fair share of the medical path of the mental health world. And this is a very interesting phenomenon where you can take the same person, they can go see 3 different professionals in a respective field. They might come out with 3 different diagnoses and prognoses because most doctors, as you mentioned, right, this is what they're taught. This is what they're taught in school. So if you see someone who specializes in the shoulder, you see someone who specializes in the neck, you see someone who specializes in the back, they might tell you 3 different potentialities as to what's wrong with you, because what you seek, you will find. What you're taught to see, you will find in that person. That's part of projection. And this is one of the biggest things in the mental health world that I don't think it's really actually being investigated nearly enough. But the whole thing around mental health is there's a lot of subjective reasoning in how you come up with an individual's diagnosis, right? You're trying to take what you can about one person. Let's say it's, we'll use me as an example, right? I'm 32 years old. We get 1 hour together, right? We get our first hour. You're going to give me a diagnosis in everything that you're seeing of me in a 30 minute to 1 hour time frame, without actually being able to know and understand every depth and level of my existence that has led me to this experience. And you're going to see it based on what you're predisposed to already seeing, what kind of fits the typical labels, right? And here's the interesting piece, right? An individual goes in to seek help, and they're met. So they're already opening up, being in a very vulnerable state. And they're also fearful. And then the information that they receive immediately becomes imprinted on them and starts to become who they are. I'll give you an example. Someone says, all right, listen, yeah, from everything you've told me, you have anxiety. I have anxiety. Oh, I'm anxious.
Yeah.
Now they took that label and now they're making it their own. There's power in understanding what labels are, but I feel like most people are held captive by the power of a label, and they become that label, so much so their identity, who they are and how they relate with others, if that label is removed, they are lost.
It develops a horrible loop of self-talk.
Yeah,
We're in your head, and it happened to me. Let's talk about my knee situation, right? So I was told at 24 I have arthritis in both my knees from a doctor. We can go through the whole process of me figuring that out. Through sport, I had bad knees. I kept using them, working them. It got to a point where I could barely sit on a plane. I couldn't make it through a whole movie in a movie theater without standing up and walking around, all that kind of stuff, because the pressure would build up. So I go to a doctor, or I try and make an appointment to get an MRI, because I know it's something there that we're going to see, not anything else. And then they go, you have to go to your primary care physician. So 1 copay to get the insurance money. And they go, okay, now you need to get an x-ray. And I was like, I need an MRI. They're like, well, you can't get an MRI without getting an x-ray first. And I'm like, it's not anything with the bone. So why do I have to get an x-ray? So like, just the way that it is. So then I have to wait 2 weeks before I get my appointment with my x-ray. And I had to wait 2 more weeks for my appointment to get my MRI. And you go in, you do it, and then they do the MRI, and you wait another month or so for some specialist to look at it. And I get to sit down in the room with the lady that was the specialist that could see me at the time, that looked at my images. And she goes, you have no cartilage in your knees. You have arthritis in both of your knees. You're going to be a great candidate for a knee replacement. What my suggestion would be is to stop intense exercise for the next 6 years, so you can delay the knee replacement as long as possible, because they last about 25 years. So if you get a knee replacement at 30, 31, then it'll last you into like your 60s, and then you'll probably be able to have it for the rest of your life. And I said, thank you very much. Got up and I walked out. And the way that most people would take that is, a doctor told me, if I didn't have the sports and training background that I had, I'd be like, a doctor told me this is what the blueprint they told me to follow. And it's just like oh, my knees are bad. And now I'm just thinking that I am just delaying the onset of 6 years to get a knee replacement, rather than there are things that you can do to make it better. But they're just taught that if somebody's knees are this bad, then the natural next step is to stop using them and then get a knee replacement, because that will make them feel better. And yes, unfortunately, the majority of the population is going to go for that easy route. You know what I mean? And that seems to
even
be easier
interesting.
because there's just no work involved in that diagnosis.
Yeah.
Right. Where as a trainer, like I'm very aware of telling somebody that they need to do a bunch of stuff. And a lot of the population, thank God we work with mostly athletes that are just like crazy driven individuals. Most of the people don't want to put in the work to get the outcome to have it. So that might resonate with most people. But what I said was, screw that. I'm a bodybuilder. I like to play sports. I like to do all this other stuff. I'm going to do as much research as I possibly can into how I can fix my knees. And I took it as more of a challenge than I did anything else. And I found my dream outcome and then figured out how to work towards it. And at 31 years old, my knees feel better than they did when I was 18.
I cannot wait to share this. There's a couple girls in mine who were telling me about, they were saying, yeah, I got arthritis in my knees. And I'm like,
yeah, but I've had so much with
yeah,
doctors over the years that it's just like my main,
yeah,
unfortunately in my brain, my main reaction to doctors at this point is no, let me see if I can find a better way, then I'll come back to you. It's like I had high blood pressure in my 20s, probably still because it's just genetic, but like I went in there and they're like, your blood pressure's high. We're just going to prescribe you a pill. And I was like, can we just schedule a thing for 6 months? I don't do a ton of cardio right now. Let me do cardio, eat a little bit better, drop my weight down because I was just a really heavy bodybuilder at that point. And I went back in, my blood pressure was fine. I didn't have to be on medication. But instead of saying exercise more and eat better, they go, here's a pill. And then I could keep exercising the way that I do without any cardio for my heart health. And I could,
instead of fixing the problem, we're going to give you a Band-Aid.
pill would drop my blood pressure to that point
Yeah.
anyway. And I'm just like, that's, yes, it would work. And yes, it's the easy route, but is it the healthiest in the long term? Or is it the least expensive for the person that you're prescribing to? And it's no, it's because insurance is going to cover most of it. So the medical industry wins and the person wins. And they're trying to find a win-win solution rather than a healthy win solution for the person.
I think this is a perfect opportunity to discuss these two various paths an individual can take. I say let's play the devil's advocate and we'll talk about the passive approach, because as you mentioned, most people don't necessarily want to do the work to fix the actual problem that was created and got them in that situation, and that's understandable. If that is the decision you want to take, if you want to take a more passive approach to your recovery, that is fine if for you. However, it's best to know that what you put into something is what you're going to get out. So if you're not putting in any effort or intentionality into understanding how you got there, the actual root cause as to why, here's what will happen. You just accept everything that is. You go to a doctor. They say, all right, well, we'll use the blood pressure as an example. Okay, here's a pill for that. You don't have to change anything. Do this. Okay, here's what will happen when you do that. Because the body, the only constant is change. You cannot, taking that same dose is going to it's going to do the same thing. It's going to get you to where you need to be. But then all of a sudden, because the problem was not actually fixed, or maybe there was no problem to begin with, and that's just how your body is. That's a whole nother conversation. Now they're going to have to do something else later to continue to have that same physiological effect, because as your body gets used to what that dose is or how it's responding, your body will adapt and overcome it. And the overlying program will always prevail. So then it goes from one medicine to two medicines, and then maybe do this, and then maybe do that. And take this.
It turns into a higher dose, another surgery, and an imbalance in your body, and anything like that. And I view injuries as an opportunity for growth, or a problem as an opportunity for growth. And when you take the hard route that will be less work later, number one, you learn how to fix the problem by yourself. So now you don't have to go to somebody else for any advice because you
become self-sufficient in your own life, your own journey. That's huge.
Yep. So like easiest one's weight loss. Yeah. It's super hard for somebody to lose weight the first time. For me, I've done it for the last 10 years. Every single year, I go through a bout of losing 25 to 30 pounds, probably just because I want to look a little bit better, because about 25 pounds over is where I like to live in the winter, because I don't have to do marketing or have my shirt off or anything like that. And I feel good. And then I want to get leaner. But now that's just such an easy process because I've done it so many times. And The
You
high blood pressure
invested.
thing is a thing where like I know the steps now, so I can do it.
Yeah.
And the fixing my knees is like I know the steps now, so I can do it. So it's turned into like 10 minutes a day of work, and now my knees are continuing to get better.
I want to talk about that because there's two different types of investments, both uh, emotionally, energetically for that person, and financially, right? Because this is the biggest thing. People will pay for a quick fix, yet they'll have to pay in perpetuity for more and more fixes, and they don't see like, oh, well, to eat healthy, it's so much more expensive. Okay, I understand. To invest time into your health is taking time away from other stuff. Okay, I understand. But I'm going to give you the choice. I will tell you this definitively. People who take more active roles in their life, in their health, their recovery, their performance, they will always experience and receive better results. Those that do not, you'll continue it. You'll see results, but they're going to be that which you're putting in, right? Or
Yeah.
now it's going to be maybe you're paying this in perpetuity, potentially forever. Whereas you invest more now, your payoff is significantly bigger later.
Yep. If you can reframe or change your window of time and looking for the gratification from weeks to months to years to decades, the work that you do looks significantly different, right? So like if I'm doing a bodybuilding show, I'm 12 weeks out. I'm thinking about weeks or months in my brain, and I'm doing things that are a detriment to my health in that short term. But if I wanted to, in the way that a lot of bodybuilders do it, I wouldn't do it that way anymore. But
Yeah.
now my focus is decades in the future, right? It's not having another knee replacement or a knee replacement at all by the time I'm 60, 70 years old, right? Really sticking it to that doctor that gave me that advice. And that becomes a thing where, okay, now I know these steps, but I'm going to be able to do stuff with my kids, it was a um, real fear of mine. If I had kids that I wouldn't be able to play sports with them, yeah, I'd look like I could play sports, but the way that I was training to look good was making it so I couldn't like jog out to center field playing softball without my knees hurting for a week. You know what I mean? Or throw a playing catch with my dad was one of my favorite things in the entire world. Throwing a ball hurt so bad for the longest time. And then I just made the conscious decision like, hey, let's look 20 years into the future. I don't know if I'll have a family, but if I do, I'd really like to be a baseball coach or something for my kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And let's reframe it. So it's 10, 20 years in the future instead of how can I look the best this week? And why am I neglecting the things that are going to make it better or make my life better in the future? Just because you can't necessarily see that right now doesn't mean it's something that you should focus on. And with injuries, it's the same thing where it's like, I mean, once you have one, then you start focusing on it. But if you are training with people that know that those are common injuries for the sport that you're playing, then it's going to be part or damn well should be part of the programming to fix it so it never happens, or get your body into a place where everything is so strong around where that injury could possibly happen that recovery is going to be 2 times faster than the 6 months waiting than 6 months after the surgery
Yeah.
type of time frame, where that's so much time in terms of the career of an athlete.
So much. And let's talk about this because I feel like I feel like most people will accept the prognosis and the timeline. And now anytime they, God forbid an injury should occur, it's immediate acceptance of a certain length of time to get back. And
Six
in
months. It's always 6 months, and that makes no sense because everybody's different. Why is it 6
yes,
months? Every injury is
well,
different.
infallibly, and this will be a conversation we'll dive into in a whole nother time in regards to the quantum physics and the components around that allows for healing to happen significantly and more rapidly than what most people are used to. And I mean, I could give you countless examples of athletes that we've worked with that have sustained some type of acute injury or have come to us having a chronic injury and how quickly we have fixed those and have changed their entire movement and mental paradigm around those. Like, honestly, this is probably one of the best experiences that will always come to me, at least right now, was um, my experience with Haley. And last year, when she had a very significant groin healing opportunity from a game. And I'll kind of talk briefly about that. So it was a pretty bad strain, and so much so is had so much difficulty walking. That was on Saturday. It was in March of last year, and that following weekend was the playoff weekend for the PW. So it was the last week of regular season games, if you will, and she had to miss that Sunday. Not even at Friday was that playoff day. Her coaches on her team and the US coaches were worried because it happened in March, early March. She was going to not be good to go for Worlds, which was in the beginning of April. And they were so worried that it's typically a 6 to 8 week recovery for a groin healing opportunity such as this one. And because obviously her and I have been able to work together for a while, she knew immediately to not take ownership over that injury and immediately view it as an opportunity to fix the underlying issues that resulted in that. So the mindset was already there. We had very specific things that we implemented, and I'll share some of those real quick. So one of the biggest things that we implemented is like the guided healing technique, where we're applying different pressure to different tense, tight muscles, especially after an injury. That tightness is a compensation designed to protect the body. And what often typically always happens is everything that is done to address an injury is active. So you have muscles that are already over active in a protective state that you're trying to work and activate more to fix those problems. Another thing you also have to do isn't just continue to activate them. They're already active. Now they're overactive. It's to actually kind of, I say we're turning these muscles off to allow them physically to reset, to allow that to rest. Because if they're on and they're in the constant contractile state, right, that means they're using energy constantly. That means it's pulling on the two joints from where it originates and where it inserts. So now you're creating compensations on one side that will then mirror compensations on the other. So what the first thing we did was we went through her body, finding all the different spots around that have really tightened and tensed up, and focused on breathing. I really love utilizing frequencies or different sounds that helps your body and your brain get into a more relaxed state. I like to do, we call it like the guided healing technique, because I like to audibly guide the individual through the experience. One of my favorite ways to do it is you take the mind out of it by giving them a very intentional thing to focus on. What I have found to be most powerful around this is having them pick a favorite memory. And I usually say, where's your favorite place that you've been on vacation? And the reason why I'm doing this while I'm also talking through what I am doing with them, where basically it's just I'm applying pressure to a knot or some tight spots and having them focus on the breathing in. When they breathe out, I tell them to feel their whole body sinking as they breathe out and relax. I am then moving and manipulating that muscle to help release the tension and realign it. Depending on the type of injury, sometimes I'll put that body part back in the position in which the injury has occurred to help re-engage the motor patterns, that muscle memory now that is wired in from that compensation as a protective mechanism. So we're basically putting the body back in that vulnerable position that it doesn't want to be in. And we're basically working on nice relaxing breathing and telling the body that our body is safe to be in this position now. And what will start to happen is the body will start to, instead of continuing to hold on to that tightness, it'll start to allow it to rest, release, and realign. And most oftentimes it happens relatively within 1 to 3 sessions, if you will, depending on how persistent that program is. Sometimes it takes a little bit to really let go. But what I've noticed is
Let's go at first, and then they feel awesome, and then the body might react and tighten back up, and they come see you the next day and the day after that, and it's
it's
really
like significant improvement. So I'll give you one example. One of our hockey girls was experiencing a lot of tightness and tension in her neck and her shoulder. So when she was at one of the games that I couldn't be there for, I had her. We did a guided healing session virtually where I had her laying on her back, and I took her through that guided visualization. So we were talking about her favorite vacation memory. So I didn't really get to share too much. The reason why I like to do this is because the brain can take your body back to that physiological state. The more you can immerse yourself in those details, that experience starts to goes from a memory, or goes really from just a quick mental picture to a memory as you continue to open up. It's like a file in a computer. And the more details you pull out, the more that memory starts to become another experience. So she was sharing with me, it was on a beach. And so we went through as when I was talking to her, I was like, all right, deep breath in. Now I want you to focus on what are you seeing right now? She would share with me, oh, I'm seeing, like, right now I'm just laying in the sand at the beach, and I can feel the sun. And I was like, that's amazing. That's beautiful. Let's focus on that, because you can feel it. Tells me that your body is shifting its energetic frequency as well as physiological state. Mentally, you're already there. So you're literally pulling your body into another time in which there was no other physiological feeling. And so as we continue to do that, I would have her breathe in, breathe out, and then we would do a couple breaths with her laying straight back, and then doing the same, neck facing this way, facing this way. Then we went through and we added another breathing pattern. This time on the breath out, we had her hum. And so, like, breathe in, and then just because what that does, that humming sound, is a few beautiful things about it. It creates a physiological vibration, an audible sound cue that is carrying a specific frequency, which is your innate own way of communicating to your cells. But that vibration up here is something that then kind of permeates the cell. So when that tightness is here and you're humming, what actually is happening is that it's starting to loosen up a little bit with each breath out. So you continue to do that, and then it starts to realign and get back into its normal movement pattern. The range of motion just from doing that, without even me being able to physically help guide her shoulder and her neck into some of those positions, instantly different. She felt so much better that game. Then when I got back up here, I was asking how she was doing. It was right before the next game they had. And she said, it's feeling so much better. There's still a little bit more in the shoulder on this side. And I was like, done. Let's fix this and finish this right now. So we did the same thing. We didn't have to do the humming there because I was able to provide some of that manual manipulation, and has not had any issues since then. Basically two sessions. And that shows you the power of the mind and the body, and how you can, through someone helping you, guide you into that state mentally, emotionally, brings you into that state physiologically. That we call it the guided healing technique, because all healing is self-healing. No doctors healing you, no prescriptions healing you, all these things, no surgeries healing you. These things are designed to give the body what it needs to help it heal. And all I'm ever doing is help putting your mind, your brain, and your physical body in a harmonized state that allows all of it to work together in the healing and the growth. The body wants to heal. That's it. It's constantly healing, it's constantly growing, it's constantly repairing. We don't have to think about that. It's doing it automatically for us. And if we provide the right nutrients, the right feedback mentally, emotionally, with the physical responses of things that we might be doing, whether that's focusing on the breathing, that's mobility, that's proper training, those type of things, that intentionality truly creates such a different internal environment that allows you to grow, excel, to heal, and even prevent severities in injuries, or even honestly the immune system. Because there's a whole nother component to this around the physiological stressors you're experiencing. It drains the immune system. And when you're both in a state of worry and you're scared, you're trying to focus on everything you can to get healthy again, it's energetically draining. And it is, because your body's also working harder to repair. And I think the rest value is really underutilized and overlooked as one of the most important pieces, whether you're a healthy individual continuing to maintain good health, right? Or you're someone who might be feeling off physically, or internally with your immune system, or even emotionally. Providing your body with the appropriate rest will allow it to kind of harmonize, synchronize, and get back on its own same page, so that it can heal, it can grow, and it can realign you into that version of yourself that you're working to become. And yeah, I'm super excited about all the things that we're doing and are going to continue to do for all of them and all of our athletes.
Yeah, I've seen this personally a bunch of times with Nick, but like 2 times stand out that are really cool. Number one, we had an athlete, I don't know, was it a month ago, who tore his ACL?
Yeah, he just came to us because of the injury.
Yeah, because of the injury. We got him after the injury because he'd heard about some of the things from a coach that was just like, these guys will get you back faster than anything else. He'd already seen a doctor. Doctor had already told him that he needs surgery, he should stay off it, all that kind of stuff. Then he starts training with us that week because he's just an amazing kid who's like, I'm not going to take a back seat to my recovery. I'm going to do as much as I can until the surgery, and then I'm going to be back as fast as I can afterwards. So we created programs all around this. But Nick did some pool training with him and did some guiding healing technique. And this guy, he was limping pretty bad coming into it, and had like no mobility and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't get to see the limping part, but Nick explains it. And I was training with Jack afterwards, and I seen the next day, and he walks up completely fine, like no limp at all. He's like, yeah, whatever he did, I don't understand it, but like I'm walking fine. And then like a week later, he comes out and he's like, he was doing drills in his backyard, like shooting the lacrosse ball with his long stick between his legs and around his neck, like doing side steps and stuff. You shouldn't be able to do that with the torn ACL. And it's because we were able to, number one, get him to believe in it, and then get everything to relax around it. Because this kid bought in 100%. Like you could tell talking to him that he's just like, yep, these guys are going to help me get better. They're telling me that it's okay. All this other stuff. We've taught him the right things to do around training, and we're going to keep training him through the injury, and guaranteed he's back in half the time that a doctor said, if not faster from this. And he still went and got the surgery, but he did not look like he needed surgery after when he was going to get it. So it's really cool.
I want to mention something too about that, because he, as you mentioned, he came to us already with a very open and excited mind. And so when I was first doing the guided healing technique with him, he was open to it, but not necessarily physically like expecting to experience much.
That's how I experienced it. I was like, yeah, dude, whatever. My knees have hurt forever.
It's everybody, and it's understandable. And I love that, because that means your authentic and genuine experience around it is going to change chemically, emotionally, the thought paradigm around what you think and now believe is possible for you to experience. And it was cool because I had him do just like walk 10 yards, turn, walk back. I want you to, and when you're walking, I told him before we did this, I was like, I want you to observe how you're feeling as you're moving. Observe that, because I want you to be able to see and feel the difference after we've done it. So he did it. And so he did it. Then I worked on the opposite leg than the injured leg first, because that leg is overcompensating drastically because of that one. So I like to release the tension, realign that, because that'll allow for the other side to just release a lot quicker,
Yep.
more smoothly. And then, so we did that one side. I said, all right, walk. And I noticed both times we did that, he always turned on the non-injured leg.
Yeah.
And which I was excited to see how he would feel after doing the injured side. So after we did that, he immediately, well, first he was like, wow, like this leg feels so insanely light. I can move it. I've never even knew this leg could feel so mobile. And I was like, now do you feel the drastic difference between those two legs, right? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, now let's get that side to feel like that. Let's release all the tension, get it realigned. And so we did that. It was probably about, I probably spent like 15 to 20 minutes working on both legs. There was I went pretty in depth with not just the leg, but also around the back and the glutes and the hip flexors and the calf as well to really fix that whole, and the low back. After that,
everything around the injury tightens up.
yeah.
You got to fix it all.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole nother topic. So then he got up and immediately had an instant pep in his step. I could see him physically, like almost glowing and radiating with like excitement. I could see his facial expression change. And it was funny because he walked down and back and he immediately turned, but he planted on that injured side and turned in a way. I was like, interesting. Like, I wouldn't expect that. Just from the movement pattern, you continuously turning in the same direction because you're feeling like you have to protect that leg. No thought of that at all. Then he came back. I asked him. It's like I could easily see the thoughts he was having. I was like, "How are you feeling?" And he's like, He's like, I don't have words. I was like, "Let me ask you this: are you trying to find the physical pain that you were once experiencing?" He was like, I don't even know how to explain this. He's like, yeah. He's like, hey, how did you know? Like, I'm expecting to experience certain pain in stiffness with moving. And now I'm like, I feel as if it never happened. And I feel so much better. I feel so much more confident. And that genuine expression and experience for him has now led to him being the biggest believer in himself and what he is capable of with the right guidance and the right resources, where now he feels so much more in control and empowered by his recovery process. And I told him, I was like, listen, like, despite how amazing you're feeling, like, we're gonna respect what the doctor said. You're gonna go in, you're gonna get the surgery, right? But this is the coolest piece, because you're going into this. They're going into fix an anatomical issue, and now you don't have to do all as like usually when a surgery happens, you're fixing an anatomical issue, but you've never fixed anything else, so the issue actually still persists. Now you're going in, it's gonna be fixed. And now you have all of our guidance moving forward that is going to allow you to take the most empowered active role in this. And he sent me a video the other day of him sitting in a chair outside playing wall ball. He's like, I was so excited to get out. And, he was so excited after that surgery on, it was a Thursday. He asked, like, what do I do this? I was like, listen, we're going to teach you the most important piece to all of this. This is what you're doing this weekend. You're just going to rest, relax, and be. I don't want you thinking of anything other than allowing yourself to fully be present in recovering, resting, and healing. And he was like, so there's nothing you want me to do? No. And here's why. We do not want to reinforce that there's always a constant need of you needing to do something in order to be healing, because that, by definition, is only going to continue a perpetual loop of energy out is the only way you can recover. Now, allow that to shift. You can be in a state of being. We're all human beings. We're not human doings. Human being for a reason. Be there. Allow your body to just be, heal, and recover. Now, when we come out next week, we're going to start to see how you're feeling. Plus, this is going to create this mental and physical desire of wanting to take more of an active role when the time is right. Because now we're also focusing on being in tune with your body. You are now understanding what your body's comfortable in doing. So it's like really cool when you mentioned how he sent us that video of him doing those different lateral movements before the surgery. I asked him, I was like, how are you feeling when you thought about going in to do that? He said, well, he's like, I was curious. I was very comfortable and confident in how I was moving. And I was curious to see how the lateral movements would be. It was more of just kind of like a slight walk through / very light jog through, just to kind of feel it. And he's like, I noticed like there was no pain, no issues with any of that. And the reason why I know maybe many people hearing this would not necessarily promote that, doing lateral movements and before and all that. But here's actually the take home
We
message.
didn't tell him to go do that.
That is like his body told him, and this is exactly the take home message. We've been really focusing on being in tune with his body. He's like, all right, you're feeling comfortable and confident in doing this. And this tells me that his body, his mindset, the subconscious program that controls that physiological response is in a whole nother paradigm, that it is completely changed, and he's not experiencing that physiological response in his body anymore, which means he got the surgery. He's going to respond incredibly freaking well to it. Everything is basically fixed now, healing. So he's going to, exactly what you say, he's not only going to come back quicker, he's going to come back physically, mentally, emotionally stronger, more resilient, more dedicated, more with such an amazing plan and understanding and self-awareness that will allow him to always be at his maximal peak, because now he's learning to create a relationship with himself, mentally, emotionally, and physically. He's understanding when something is off, or when now something is on. And now he's understanding, like, I'm feeling this confident. I'm feeling this. I have this internal desire and idea of trying this. And then when he did it, it's being rewarded with feeling well, moving well, and experiencing what is aligned with that goal. And that is also allowing him to continue to be even more bought in with his own recovery. And this is the coolest piece, because when you put in effort, you might not always receive what you expect to at first. But if you take your expectation out and you take what you are receiving as information specifically for you, and you see, how is this serving me? It could tell you a few things about you. You might experience it, something, and like, is this serving me? And then it might be yes. I'm like, okay, cool. How can this serve me? How can I apply this? And now you have more insight around you, around what you're doing, who you are, and how you can execute something, and how you're processing and interacting and engaging in an external stimuli, whether that's a coach, whether that's a critic, whether that's a parent, a friend, or a specific experience you're having that might be frustrating or encouraging, right? You're now able to sift through it and see, oh, I can feel this individual's frustration. That's their projection of their experience. They're just trying to share to help me, but this isn't anything that actually is in relation to me. I don't have to take any of this on. I don't have to own it. I appreciate there's a genuine connection here, but none of this is benefiting me outside this connection. So I don't need to take any of that on. And I feel like most people feel like they have to apply everything they hear from everyone. And the moment you do that, you start to become fragments of different people's brief perception of reality, and which gets you lost in the matrix of everybody else, if you will, where he is specifically coming home to himself, if you will. He's cultivating this relationship with himself that's going to allow him in perpetuity forever to always be and do the things that align with the goals that he has. And he will always be in the most empowered position to do so. And that is where true infinite potential really lies. It's innate within all of us, just waiting for ourselves to look inward and experience it, cultivate it, and express it. And
Belief
that,
is half the battle.
boom.
Belief is half the battle. And I don't know, we've worked with so many people over the years, but I've had so many injuries over the years where it's like, it's a phenomenon where, like, the first one you listen to the doctor, what was my first real injury? aside from the knees. I tore my labrum, and it was partially torn. Doctor said either 6 months to heal, or you can get surgery now, and then it'll take 6 months to heal. So I was like, poor in college, I didn't have money for surgery, so I decided to do the 6 months of resting part. But me being myself, I went ahead and I squatted every day for that entire 6 months as a challenge to myself because I couldn't work my upper body. And then I started getting bored halfway through it. So I would work out my right side of my body because it was my left shoulder that was torn. So I'd do shoulder exercises with my right side, not my left side, because I found studies where when you activate a muscle on one side, your brain automatically connects it to the other side, and your muscle actually contract. You can feel this if you do like a single arm bench press, something like that. Your chest will still engage on the other side just for balance reasons. Everybody has to deal with that. So I came back from that injury. I still waited the 6 months, but I felt healthy enough to do stuff in like 4 months. And then I tore something else. And I was like, okay, cool. Now I know a blueprint that made me feel good. I never went to go see a doctor. I just went through the blueprint, and I was back in 3 months. And then I tore something else. What was it? I tore my pec partially. And I did the blueprint again. I was back in 2 months. But this time I just lowered the weight all the way down to a weight that didn't hurt. And then I worked back up slowly on a weekly basis so I could get back to the weight without pain. So whatever weight I touched that had pain involved, I would back it down to a weight that didn't have pain. I'd still go through the movement, both sides. So instead of going heavy on one side, now I was testing something else out. And in a matter of like 2 months, while working out that muscle every single day or every single week, I recovered to a place of complete heal in 2 months while touching weight the entire time. So there's not even a change in my physique at all. And it's like, yes, those things work, but also because of my experience the first time, I took my knowledge from the first injury, I applied it to the second injury, and I applied it to the third injury. And I used the same techniques and tried something new each time. And I believed that it would fix itself faster because I was going through the motions and actively participating as the number one kind of champion to my recovery, rather than allowing somebody else to dictate when and my timeline, how it's going to get fixed and everything else like that. It's more like, how can I be the person that is 100% in control with this? How can I get a game plan that I am 100% bought in on and I believe that will work? And those two things together, while focusing on sleep and eating in a caloric surplus, so my body's healing at a higher rate. You know what I mean? I believed it was going to happen, and that's the main reason why I was willing to put in the work. So the work and that belief together created that outcome way faster than anything else. And that's what you should look for in a coach, is somebody that like can get you to buy in and be excited about the game plan. So now instead of having this negative emotion around an injury, it's like, oh, I'm excited to figure out how we can fix this. And it's almost like a race to get back. And that's how Jack approaches, right? Because we're just like, we'll get you faster. Listen to the doctor. We'll make up a game plan around their suggestions, but let's take that timeline and throw it the fuck out the door. And let's see how fast we can get you back. And then as soon as we can do stuff without pain, then that's when you're back. And it's going to be gradual steps moving forward every single week, every single month to get him there. But it's going to happen a lot faster because he's willing to take an active participant role with us as a team to get him through that. And he's going to believe in it, because you can just tell by the way. If he didn't react the way they did after the first day, it would have been a battle for a month or two to try and get him to believe before we even trusted him to do the movements by himself.
Yeah, and there's, I think, one of two huge things. Actually, there's a lot of beautiful things you covered, but like, the motion is lotion and movement is medicine. And I think finding, as you did, you went through and found movements in ways that your body could move, or you could facilitate movement that would actually help with the recovery, the healing, and the growing. And I think, and this is kind of the coolest piece here, where as coaches, and this is what gets me so excited for what we do, because it's not really getting people to just buy into what we want you to do. It's more of, we want you to buy into what you're doing. And
if what we
we
say there's complete and total disconnect from that person, we have to find a new game plan and a way to approach the recovery, or else it's not going to work because they're not going to put in the work because they don't believe in it.
Yeah, and that's the fun piece. And like how you mentioned, this was with a couple of our hockey girls who are out for the season with injuries. I've really enjoyed getting to kind of connect with them, as one had just gotten surgery and the other one is going to be in the process of finding out the game plan for her surgery. But being able to have been there upon the immediate experience has been very, very nice, because we've been able to change their entire mindset, or help cultivate a more positive framing of what is going on, as you had mentioned, that makes them excited for what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, the way that you say things is great, because you haven't mentioned anything but healing opportunity every time that you talk, and getting people to have that kind of outlook when something happens. And with us, it's a little bit easier. Like when I hurt myself, it's a way that if somebody approaches me with that same injury, now I've gone through it myself and I have a game plan to go in on. So I see it as a learning opportunity half the time, but they're not looking for that.
Yeah.
But getting them to reframe it and an opportunity to come back stronger and better, because now they're aware of what it feels like to almost have that injury.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I would have torn my chest if I hadn't torn it the first time, because I know what it feels like when it's about to tear. So you stop the movement.
Yeah.
And I learned more than anything else. And now I can tell people what that feels like in initial conversations. So when they feel something like that, they're not going to tear their chest once. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And you know what I mean? So that the injuries are an opportunity for me, and I'm freaking so happy that they happened, because like number one, I got to fight back, and number two, now I get to teach people what's going to happen, because especially in the bodybuilding world where you're pushing just unsafe amount of weight to put on as much muscle as possible, every single professional bodybuilder goes through tears. But I'm starting with these younger people that are doing their first couple of shows or whatever else in my athletes, and I can go, they're saying something feels a little bit off, and I go, okay, let's have a real conversation about this. When you start to feel kind of like a pull apart in the muscle with some like static shocks, get somebody over there to take that weight off of you. Don't push it up yourself. And then they can go do the next set, because they're just in a wrong position. It's not because anything's wrong. And then we can actively add that recovery stuff to make it stronger, so the injury never happens, into their program. And that gets them to keep training and not lose 6 months of progress.
Yeah.
Right? I can't imagine what life would have been like for me if I didn't have all of these tears, because I still made it to 280 pounds competing. And you know what I mean? And I had to take 6 months off multiple times to get there. Now we can work through a linear progression over years, because it takes years and years to get to that point with setbacks. But now we can do it over years without setbacks. So you're going to get there freaking like a year earlier than you would have. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things I always say is, because it took me quite a while, mentally, emotionally, to get to a place to start reframing the injury I had experienced. And it, for no reason, is more just like lack of awareness. I never really had thought about investing any. I was never taught, told, or it didn't come to me at the time of experiencing my injury, of like taking mental inventory and emotional inventory, and understanding how I was thinking, how I was feeling, and what I was doing or not doing during that time. But here's like one of the things that came to me was, is I view every injury exactly that, as a healing opportunity. Is like one of the things that I hear from athletes is like, if I wasn't hurt, like I could be getting better. And I was like, oh, think about it this way: if it didn't happen now, and that you weren't even aware of this limitation, this is a limitation within your body somewhere. If you weren't aware of this limitation, it would catch up to you eventually. The fact that it's here now is awesome, because we now know that this was a disconnect, and we can now take the time to find out where the true root cause of this, so we can find it, feel it, heal it, fix it, and completely release it. And now I always like to trying to find the opportunity in everything that doesn't seem like one is a huge, huge, huge mental strength, resilience, and it is its own critical thinking and solution-oriented mindset that allows the body to see, process, and understand and relate back to you what you need to do in real time. And I was telling them, it's like, if you're viewing this as what you're missing out on right now, the more you keep doing this, the more you keep going, right? The injury happened here, and now next day you're like, I missed this. I could have been so much further if it wasn't for this. Next day, man, I wish, right? So now everything, now you're just bringing this with you. You're carrying it. You're carrying this baggage, if you will.
Yeah, without a game plan, without a goal, you're constantly rooted in the past. And
Yeah.
then you're feeling like you're not moving fast enough. Where if you can get a goal and
Yeah.
a solid game plan that you believe in to get to that goal, the past is just done. You know,
Yeah.
and then tomorrow becomes the new goal. And
Yeah.
then take it day by day, and you're feeling a little bit better because the actual game plan is working.
Yes.
And that's the beautiful thing about starting people with injuries off with guided healing technique, because there's so little instant positive feedback in this world that having Nick be able to go in there and get his hands on, and then them immediately just being like, oh, it's fixed already. Be like, there's still work to do, but yes. And you know what I mean? Where they just automatically have that shadow of a doubt that things that could get better, right? Because right now they're at their lowest point. So if you can fix their lowest point within a week of it happening, and then be like, okay, now here's the game plan to get you back to where you were, even though they already feel like they're back to where they were, right? They're just not allowed to do the amount of work that they feel like they can do yet, because we're going to gradually get you to a place where you're going to come back stronger, better, and faster, and all that kind of stuff. And that's the power of the guided healing technique, on top of a good game plan and a goal, right? Because
Yeah.
it gets them starting the process in such a mindset where they feel like they can't lose, right?
Yes.
The only thing that they're missing is being able to be on the field, which is painful, and it sucks for young athletes, for athletes at the professional level, especially, you know what I mean? But to be missing out on the field and feeling like you also can't do it is so much heavier. And like to not know the road back to being able to play, you know what I mean? It's so much heavier and more discouraging, which can have a more influential, more influence on how you can bounce back or how fast you can come back.
And it also creates an unintentional association with your sport, and feeling like now you have this wanting to be back out there on the course or the field, or the court or the ice or whatever. And you're now associating that, thinking that, projecting that version of you in the future with no confidence, because of where you are now, that what you just were experiencing in the past is affecting you now. You're now just projecting in the future of like, oh, I'm afraid, like, if I'm not doing something now, or like, oh, X, Y, and Z, like the next time I'm out there, I'm not going to be confident. I'm not going to be the same version. And all of a sudden now you're now taking what was the past that you've brought to the present, and you're projecting in the future for it to potentially continue again. And I've noticed this with different athletes that have sustained the same injuries over and over. It's not just a physiological thing. It's a subconscious program of almost inevitability at some point, until that confidence can take over and completely wipe out that whole subconscious fear and worry that might be ruminating. And
If you're
one of
not
the
moving free, your chance of injury is so much higher. And if you're thinking about the way, like, don't let your knee move a certain way, or something along those lines, then it's locked up while you're doing the motions, right? It's like getting in a car accident where you hear that, like, the person that's asleep or the person that's drunk survives or doesn't have any injuries afterwards. It's because they don't tense up. Tensing up causes more injuries. And it's the same thing. So if you're constantly going into the movement, or having that in your mind where now you're tense when you're taking a step and pushing off to the left, you know what I mean? it's gonna actually increase the propensity of something bad to happen because you're so tight through that movement, instead of just strong. And we just want you to be strong so you can move free.
Let's talk about this too, because here's something really interesting. You mentioned the tension. If you're tight and tensing up, any potential impact, whether it is an outside external impact of a collision, whether it's within the sport, right, or a non-contact related force torque oriented type of movement that creates the tension, right? When you're tight and tense, your body is pulling on those 2 points of origin insertion. And if it's that tense and tight, it's just going to create more pulling on
Yep.
those two joints. The muscle and tendon, one of two things: either those give away first, or it then attacks the joint at the ligament and actual bone or cartilage structure.
Yep.
And it was so interesting you mentioned the car accident, because Haley and I had gotten hit once. And interesting, when you're in those moments, like, time truly does like really slow down. It was very interesting because in that moment we saw inevitably that we were going straight into like the corner of this guardrail, and it's like, all right, well, this is gonna happen. And she was in the driver's seat, I was here, and I immediately like put my arm on her. Looked at her and just said, breathe out and relax.
Yeah.
And breath in, and as soon as we're about to breathe out, boom. Neither one of us were hurt, and we hit that. She had gotten a nice like burn from the airbag coming out, and definitely a little tight from the collision, obviously,
Yeah.
afterwards. But like, I mean, we're definitely very fortunate and grateful that we did walk away from that pretty much unscathed. That could have been a very different experience, potentially not even here today. And I'm not giving credit to only just that. I feel they definitely knew we were being watched out for sure. But that was just something that you had mentioned, and I think that kind of goes back in regards to the guided healing technique, because one of the biggest things that we're doing is taking those tense muscles, turning them off so they can reset, relax. But like, another thing to mention, when those muscles are tight, like if you make a fist and you just continue to squeeze it as hard as you can, and you were to continue to do that for as long as I'm here talking with you, right, you'll start to notice after a certain amount of time, the feeling in your hand starts to build up with intensity. And then all of a sudden you'll start to notice that the coloration in your hand starts to change colors, where now you're restricting blood flow, you're restricting oxygenation, you're restricting the electrical and chemical signaling to those muscles or those cells to allow them to heal. They're constantly being pulled on tight. The messaging that's getting through, the type of movement's going to be rigid, the nutrients that's being fed. You're just, it's not the most conducive environment for healing.
Yep.
You can help take that out, release that tension, relax the body, and allow those muscles to help release, reset. You're also providing the environment that allows for more nutrient and oxygen delivery, as well as then taking out all the inflammatory, all the potential problematic things of that muscle or that area that had been damaged. It allows for more internal cleaning, autophagy, fixing, healing. Yeah.
Healing, overall healing, regrowth, stuff that you're told they can't regrow. And then
I'll
add on you because you touched everything. But the last one is when something's tight, your brain's thinking about how tight it is all the time, which causes your brain just to be there constantly. So if your knee is tight, your knee is tight. So now you're worried about hurting your knee because your knee feels a little bit off. Your back is tight. You're not going to swing as free as you want to on the golf course because your back is tight. And that's going to make you swing hard, but then try and protect it. And then that's going to make you tweak your back when you're swinging through, all that kind of stuff. Where if you can just not be tight, then you don't even have that thought to begin with. So you are free and therefore relaxed, and the injuries are going to go down. That number one, we'll add it there. Number two is you're talking about inflammation, blood flow, all that kind of stuff. When it comes to injury and recovery, this is why I thank God rice got thrown out the window. But some people still use it. Rest, ice, compress, and elevate. all the things that get blood flow away from the part that's hurt. Why do you think we swell when we get hurt? And you know what I mean? It's blood flow going to the muscle so it can heal, and so your body can push all of the nutrients and all of the recovery and everything there to speed up the healing process. And then humans just decided that that hurt a little bit too bad. So what can we make it hurt less with? Oh yeah, rat or ice, compression, elevate. Let's get the blood flow out of there, and it'll make the recovery process take longer, but it'll be more comfortable. And that's nothing. I actually posted a thread of this today, or I'm posting a thread of this tomorrow because I planned it out. Most of the great things that come from your life require some sort of pain, struggle, pressure, or discomfort. And that's like with everything. And if you're trying to make it easier, it's probably going to be worse for you in the long run. Back to surgery, back to recovery, back to
if you're trying to take shortcuts, you can expect your experience to be short-lived around that shortcut. And actually, I love talking about inflammation, because I feel like there's really two different categories we can really talk about. You have the unintentional inflammation brought about by getting sick or an injury. And then you have the intentional inflammation that you bring about with the training, the practice, and stuff like that. And when talking to athletes, I like to tell them, it seems to be like inflammation is demonized. Like, no. Inflammation is very important part of the recovery
There's
process.
also just different types, right? So inflammation is demonized in terms of like overall health. Inflammation is a sign that something bad happened. It doesn't.
It's a sign of adaptation. It's really what it is.
With something fixing itself, like an injury or things we're talking about today, inflammation is good, right? After it happens, because it's a sign of recovery in the healing process. Inflammation, just living your daily life because of your diet, your lifestyle habits, all that kind of stuff, that's bad inflammation. That's not what we're talking about here. That's demonized, but people can't separate the two when they're thinking about it.
That and when I'll talk about, because I remember get questions a lot, asking, for what supplement should I take around workouts or this or that. And then I remember this was a while ago, and I won't forget this because this really helped me kind of differentiate these two to help in teaching the difference between perceived good and bad inflammation based on the environment and how they're brought about. But someone's asked me, should I take free radicals, like a vitamin C or something, after a workout to help reduce the inflammation? I was like, well, let's look at it this way. What is the intentionality behind this inflammation that you're speaking of? This is inflammation brought about from training, right? It's like your body's only going to respond to the stimulus provided. So let's say after a traditional training session, inflammation gets to about here, right? And that's the normal inflammation after a workout. That's why you feel sore, but your body's healing and recovering. We know that. That's good inflammation, right? But then you take, let's say all right, afterwards you take some vitamin C to help reduce the inflammation. Well, guess what? Let's say it's about half that. So now your response, the response that your body is now responding to overcome is here. It's I like to almost do the inverse for healthy individuals, not non-injured, etc. Is let's throw some lighter fluid and gasoline on that fire. Let's throw some inflammatory, carbs and salt on that shit, on that stuff, and that inflammation is going to go like this. Guess what? Your body's going to go like that.
Yeah.
As
long as you're feeding it the right things, then it's absolutely the best way to go about it. And you say vitamin C, the number of just people that we're training just for weight loss, just to get in shape, just teaching diet and regular exercise. The amount of people that aren't used to it, they're it comes out a couple weeks in, they're taking Advil for the muscle pain. I'm like, please stop doing that.
Yeah. Those responses are giving your body all of the necessary information it needs to do its thing while you're just resting.
Yep.
And I think it's really, in really differentiating between those two, and I'll tell them in season where we're not focused on trying to grow per se, Now we're focused on, like, now we'll work on having focusing more on a little bit more of an anti-inflammatory type diet, so that your ability to recover is quicker in season, because in season we're focused on being able to perform maximally. Being able to perform maximally is directly in relation to your ability to recover maximally. Any inability to recover maximally will change your maximal output to that relation.
Yep.
So like those are the two ways in which we'll approach the good inflammation brought about by the stimulus of practice in season training or off season training and off season development.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, my diet when I was a bodybuilder was like just carbs and sugars and all the other things. And I've never been able to put on more good tissue in my life than eating that many. It was like 800 grams of carbs a day or something crazy. You know what I mean? And, or more sometimes. But like, that's me retaining a bunch of water, being inflamed and all this other stuff. And those foods go towards recovery and better workouts and all that kind of stuff. And it was the reason I was able to put on the amount of tissue and swell up the way up
Literally.
the way that I was doing.
That's why they call it swole, if you will.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But now I'm completely inflammatory. Everything that I do is more for recovery in terms of like my joints and things like that. So I fast, I eat pretty low carb, all this other stuff, but it's not my goal to be doing that anymore. So it's like, pick your poison in terms of what you want and all of those things. But like, inflammation is good and blood flow is really good, and being able to break up all of that bad stuff is really good. All that I do for my knees is put them in positions where most people would be like, don't do that because stuff that I do now I could not do before. It would be way too painful, but it's because I do so much knee over toes movements and things like that, which are literally just working out my knee. It's knee and parts of my quad and my tibialis and my calves and everything around my knee to support it, but also get as much blood flow in there as possible. And I have regenerated tissue inside of my knee. My tendons are stronger, all that kind of stuff, because of the amount of blood flow that I get there on a daily basis. And that wouldn't be happening if I was trying to reduce the inflammation in my knees. Yes, my diet reduces inflammation in my entire body, but my exercise is literally trying to inflame my knees all the time. And now they're not inflamed anymore from me inflaming them.
Yeah, it's like you're taking out the type of chronic inflammation that inhibits the recovery, and you're targeting. Yeah,
you get in there and you can get out again, where before there was just fluid in there and it wouldn't go away because it was trying to protect itself at all times. But now it feels better, so it doesn't have to be completely swollen. I used to have this swollen knees. Even when I was lean, they were just super swollen. If I was just to put my hand on my kneecap and extend, it was so grindy. There's no more grindiness, or very minimal, right? I can still hear them when I go upstairs, but it doesn't hurt anymore. Like all that kind of stuff. But like, it's only because I literally ramped up the inflammation that I was sending to my knee over the period of 6 years. I've been doing this, and it's making them better because of the amount of healing and nutrients and everything that is going to my knees. And it's just, that's where my brain is just like, we're fixing your knees. You're fixing your knees. That's the main goal. And that's what's happening.
I love that. It's actually like one of the modalities that I enjoy coupling in with a lot of recovery is like needling. And one of the biggest reasons why I like to use needling, interestingly enough, isn't necessarily for what you might typically expect, but it's actually one of my favorite ways to use it is to create a very acute response in a chronic issue, an area that has a chronic issue. And then, like, I'll give you an example. At a conference I was at last year, met with Dr. Todd. Oh, amazing guy. He actually is very good friends with Mike Tyson and helped him prep for his last fight, which I'm sure he's probably doing for this one too.
Yeah, get the podcast.
Oh my God. Yes. We definitely will. Cause like, we definitely will. We'll get that whole team on, because we've had some very fun conversations. So he actually custom designed a laser with a diamond for precision this technology that actually targets stem cell replication for what he does with healing and for his practice. And I told him, I was like, well, I didn't have access to any of that kind of cool stuff. But what I had done when my parents and I both tried stem cell, I did it intravenously for a more full body broad spectrum, if you will. But I used dry needling and I had my chiro, Dr. J at the time. I said, like, all right, what I want you to do is put the needles in these different areas within my body, so that now that acute response of a puncture is going to send everything, so that now when I'm taking it, so not only with the stem cells, I would also, one of my favorite things to add was fish oil, a lot of fish oil, and help provide the environment of these healthy fats to help enhance the hormonal production, as well as changing the stimulus of the from the chronic to an acute inflammatory response, to allow my body to take what was chronically being experienced, and where now less nutrients and energy was being delivered for completely healing. Now it was almost just a continuous state of chronic experience. I was like, we're going to create an acute response to this chronic opportunity, if you will, and the experience, the healing drastically changed. I had kind of like patellar tendonitis, and within, I think, 1 or 2 days after that, I had no pain. I had never experienced that in my entire life. And I was like, holy crap. And I was telling Dr. Todd this. He's like, you managed to take, like, that was incredibly resourceful of being able to have like completely limited, what we would say would be limited resources in executing this, to what we have here in our lab and how we do things. He's like, yeah, you've been able to replicate, or you do, and then replicate it with some of your athletes. And I was telling him what we did with like Haley and some other of our athletes, and they're like, how you were able to do that with the amount of limited resources you have is amazing. And it gave me a whole new way to start viewing the individual's potential in healing and recovery, outside of needing to have the state of the art X or Y, and how this can actually be done with whatever you do have access to. And it's finding ways that you can be intentional and use what you do in the way that best fits what that end goal and outcome is.
Yep. 100%, man. No, it's so cool to be a part of some of these journeys that we've had. And I mean, I know that nothing makes me feel better than helping somebody get back from a place where they're feeling down, whether that is they have to lose 100 pounds, to if they have an injury and they need to fight their way back. And it's because, I mean, and I know Nick feels the same way, because we've both been in that boat before. One of the best things you can do is work with somebody who has experienced what you're experiencing on some level and knows the pain that you're going through, so they can sympathize and then also tell you, look at me now.
Yeah.
We know what we're doing. You're going to come back stronger than ever. You're 16 years old. You have your whole freaking life ahead of you. I know it feels like your life's ending right now, but right, we'll make it so like you won't even remember this, or it's going to be a positive experience at the end of it. Because I mean, looking back, you smile on these types of things, and it's a story to tell about how you're resilient and better because of it. And that's the whole point.
I will never forget this moment in time. An individual I was pretty close with at the time had said to me, it's like, I'm so sorry you had experienced all that with, your depression and your back and stuff. And my first response, and this was a couple years ago, so I was actually very proud of my response, because this is what I had been working internally to get to this point. But how I reacted and responded immediately to that told me everything about where I was. My immediate response was, I am so grateful. I am so grateful. I am only grateful for all of that, because if it wasn't for that seemingly hell on earth that I experienced, I would not be able to have any type of impact that I'm able to now. Like, if it wasn't for that entire experience, be honest, I have no effing clue what I'd be doing right now. Like, I I have no idea. I wouldn't be the person I am mentally, emotionally, physically. I would never have been the athlete I was. I certainly would never have been the type of coach, the type of mentor, the type of friend or family member that I am now if it wasn't for any and every single thing that I've ever experienced, good, bad, and indifferent. And all of those shit moments that you're experiencing in the moment, for anyone who is experiencing something right now and it feels inevitably suffocating, frustrating, scary, sad, angry, whatever you are experiencing, know that, one, you are never alone. Never. Two, this too shall pass. It sounds silly, but I promise everything with time will come and gain clarity. You'll gain understanding. You'll gain a whole new insight and wisdom that will forever change you in a favorable way, but it will also have a radiating effect in everyone in your life, everyone who you ever get to come in contact with. And that is the ripple effect of how one moment in time can really define or change you, whether knowingly or unknowingly, and how any moment in time you always have infinite control over how you experience it, how you want to relate to it, and how you want to interact with what that is. You hold all of the power that you ever could possibly imagine or need. And if you're ever in a place where you're looking for guidance, need help, I'm telling you this: ask, ask. There are far more people that want to help you than see you suffer. I guarantee and I promise that. I promise that. Every time I have gained the courage to ask for help at any time of need, it was always, always well received, very, very openly, and everything that I had built up in my mind around asking for help and what that would mean or how that might make me look or how that might make me feel. Upon immediately saying and asking, I could feel that heaviness and this built up, uh, mm, almost negative perception of what might happen just leave me. And I was only ever met with unconditional acceptance and love and support. And anyone who might not have those outlets and avenues in your life, there are ways that you can find them. And that's all that we ever want anybody to be able to do, is find ways that you can connect with yourself, find the people that you can connect with that can help you, that can guide you, that can empower you. And finding my only mission and vision and my purpose in this life is to be able to help everyone that I come in contact with, and not get them to have, like, believe in what I'm doing, but it's more about getting each individual to find that belief within themselves and how we can cultivate building and bolstering that belief up so that you have the belief in yourself, the confidence in yourself, and the knowledge, the wisdom, all of our collective experiences, everything that you could ever need at your disposal so that you can navigate anything and everything in your life now, in perpetuity, forever.
Most of the great things from your life require some sort of pain, struggle, pressure, or discomfort. And to throw Nick Stoops' little quote in here, it's always a healing opportunity.
Amen.
I think that's the perfect place to end this. We wanted to talk about a lot more, but we got so much good stuff in the third episode of the Infinite Potential podcast. I have to get out of here because I have to go train some kids at the Beast Bus. Some of our athletes are coming out tonight. But I did want to throw in here a little bit. So in the description below, we are going to have links to the podcast. You can find it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on the website. So that is going to be in the description below. Also, a lot of the training that we do with everybody, injury free or not, is with our B spans. And they are available in the link below as well. You guys listening supports the podcast in a huge way. And put your struggles in the comments or reach out to us individually. We love to interact with everybody and hear your stories and see if we can help.
Absolutely. If there's anything that you want us to discuss, talk about, any guests that you think would be awesome to have on, as Alex mentioned, anything that you're experiencing that you want guidance, always feel free to reach out. And that's information that we love to know so that we can better help tailor what we teach and what we do for all of you.
That's perfect. Once again, it's been a pleasure talking to everybody. And LFG, you beasts.
We cannot wait for the next episode. LFG, baby.